Hey everyone, welcome to Creative Conversations with David and Donna. I'm David.
And I'm Donna.
I'm Taylor.
And I'm Elise.
Perfect. You guys jumped right in. You knew exactly what to do. And that's the show, everybody. Thanks for listening. Catch you next week.
Well, they had a good director in high school.
Oh.
That's true.
So we should add some context to that.
Yes, we should.
We're sitting here with Taylor Alleman and Elise Drennan. Elise, you guys already know, she created our beautiful logo for us. We could not be happier with it. We appreciate it so much. And Taylor, you did nothing, but we're happy that you're
Thanks,
here.
David.
We're good friends. We're good friends, and I'm sure that if something comes up, we'll text you.
Absolutely.
If we need you to write a whole script for us, for a short film, that's
That
my
works.
idea, then you can write the whole script.
Okay.
We'll
I
text
can't
you.
draw. I can't art.
She wrote most of Homeroom, the short film we talked about in the first episode. So
Most? Really?
she wrote about half. She wrote a lot. I wouldn't have been
We
done
wrote.
without
No,
her.
yeah, we wrote. You wrote more than I did, but we wrote really
I'm not
close
sure.
to half.
It would not have been done without you.
Well, thank you.
So, like Donna just said, they had a very good director in high school because, just like me, they were also in the high school theater program that Donna was in charge of. You want to talk about that a little bit, Donna?
Yes.
And then, of course, they can jump in. They also know her as Ms. Van Oss. So if they slip up and they say Ms. Van Oss, they're working on it too. Just like me.
We're going to all get there one of these days. But I don't think I knew either one of you at all, did I? Before this stuff. Yeah, so I was very lucky to be able to recruit people I knew and then get just talented people and learn new talent. And as far as I know, Taylor was always in theater from very young.
Yes,
talented,
since I was like 5.
everything.
5.
And Elise had never done theater ever. Is this correct?
I think I narrated a play in first grade. I think I was the narrator for a Christmas play in first grade. So I mean, I have experience.
Yeah.
But what made you take the class as a senior?
Taylor.
It's Taylor's fault.
But even before theater, you've always been a creative person. I mean, you made that amazing logo. So you've always
I
had this gene inside of you.
yeah, I did more visual art stuff. I never been on a stage.
Yeah. So we're happy you were.
Yeah,
Well,
I
that
thoroughly
was
enjoyed it.
a true blossoming. And so it's interesting that she made us our blossoming, logo. But when Elise was working in front of the class, we all enjoyed everything she did when she was in front of us. But when we got to our performances, we all just like jaw dropped. Where did this person come from? I mean,
That's
she
funny,
just
it's
completely
fine.
threw whatever shell she had away and just let her true self out. It was hilarious. It was just so good on stage, and we just enjoyed watching her so much.
Yeah.
And then having somebody like Taylor with the experience that she had,
Brought so much to the program.
absolutely. And see, you said absolutely earlier. So the last time we recorded, which was very recently, I'm like, okay, I've got to stop saying absolutely. So I'm going to work on that as much as you want, but I need to stop saying that. But when we did the casting for the first play, there were 2 narrators, and they had like what?
200 and something lines.
It was a huge number of lines. And it was like, that's me. So she auditioned.
She
Yep,
did.
she got it. And it just brought so much to the play to have that experience, and she moved everything forward, and her confidence really affected everyone else on stage. It was, both of them added so much to the program. So
Yes,
I'm
and
glad y'all are here today.
and we're happy to call you guys still just our friends now. After we get to call her Donna. She's not just like well, she'll always be a teacher, but you
I
know
feel like
what
you'll
I
be
mean.
the one saying Miss Van Oss more than we will.
Probably. I've been trying to work on Van Oss, get the miss out the way,
Yeah.
and just go with Van Oss. But it's probably because when I still talk to my friends about her, I'm like, they know you as Miss Van Oss, so I gotta be like Miss Van Oss, and I'm getting there. You're working on absolutely. I'm working on Donna.
And I did, by the way, just say it again. So I've got to learn. I've got a new
Absolutely.
word. You said I would transfer it to you.
Thank you. We have that ability with each other, I
Oh,
think.
yes, we do.
We've talked about that already. This week, what we want to talk about is while we have y'all here, because y'all are going to go back to college sometime soon. Because
Yeah.
Elise, you're going where?
Savannah College of Art and Design.
And we're in Louisiana, so that was a big.
That's 12, 13 hours away.
Cool.
It's,
That's terrifying.
it is. It really is.
And Taylor, where do you go to college?
University of Southern Mississippi.
A little bit closer,
Very much like 3 hours.
like 3 hours away, but still
So just a
away.
fourth of it.
Just a, yeah.
Still a bit
It's
of
still not an easy weekend trip.
Not at all, no. I usually don't come home unless it's at least 5 days.
So that's crazy to me because I went to college 40 minutes away from my house. So what drove y'all to take such a big jump to go somewhere else? I mean, I know a lot of people do that, but a lot of people don't. Most people don't. So, and that's something, I mean, no offense, I would never, being somebody who wasn't in theater and never thought about being in theater, I think those kind of people would share the same personality with people who would want to go to college nearby. So you joined theater and then you moved 13 hours away. And then Taylor, same thing for you. I mean, I knew we got pretty close that last year before you went to college, and I knew that you very close with your family, and I'm sure you are too, Elise. So what drove you guys to make such a big decision like that?
You want to they both pointed at each other. For me, basically, it was I am an animation major, and there were no animation programs nearby. So that was the closest thing. I have family that lives in Georgia as well. So like I had been to one of the other campuses, and they have 2 campuses in Georgia, and I'd been to the other one, and so I already had some familiarity with it, but it was the closest thing I could find without going to, say, New York or something,
Right.
to be able to pursue what I wanted to do.
So that is what you're pursuing. You want to do that the rest of your life.
Yes.
Well, you're very talented. You should.
Thank you.
And what about you, Taylor? What are you going to college for, and what made you choose this program?
So I'm a theater major, and what made me choose Southern Miss was kind of going to New York. That was my senior trip, was going to New York. And my dad talks about it all the time. Like I felt and he saw like a different person when I was there. And it was kind of like that realization of I could do this if I really wanted to. So I knew that when I went to college, I didn't want to go that far quite yet, but I wanted to at least leave Louisiana, at least leave a little bit. So I looked at colleges all across like the Southeast, and I stumbled across Southern Miss. I wasn't even looking at Mississippi for a while, and then just stumbled across the website. And I liked how the theater program was set up, because it's not you're just specifically going for acting or musical theater. You kind of get some of everything, which I liked. And I went and toured. I met some amazing people when I went, and I just fell in love with it, and that's where I decided to go. I didn't tour anywhere else.
That's great. I'm happy that you guys have found that to make that a part of your lives, and I definitely want to talk a lot with y'all today about, me and Donna both want to talk a lot with y'all today about things that you've done, things you plan on doing, what you've learned while being there, and also just how you got started with all this creative stuff, and where you think your own personal creative process comes from. We want to know what makes you unique and different, and we want you to share that with the world for everyone to gain from it. We want you to contribute.
I can add to that. So
Please.
I have a son who wants to pursue music, and I have always just absolutely stood behind that. And other people are like, oh, well, you'll never make any money. And I'm sure both of you have heard similar, like, okay, you're going to do animation. Right.
Starting our
You're going to make a living as an actor.
Yeah, you're going to start a business called Stay Creative.
With your teacher.
Yeah, okay.
Good luck with that. So I just really wish that we could just change society's viewpoint about artists. There are people who make their living with their creative passion, and that to me is why you're here. So how did you overcome all the people saying, right?
I guess my family was always very supportive with it. They were behind me when I said, hey, I want to do art, and they're like, okay, cool, where do you want to look into? Like, they were always there with me for it. My friends were always supportive with it. Yeah.
Peace sign too.
Yeah. I forget this is an audio medium. Yeah, I always had support going into it, and it was just, I was very fortunate to be able to pursue what I wanted to do.
Well, have you had, who have been the people who have made you feel like, yeah, okay, right? Do you have that?
If I have, I think I maybe just haven't. I may have just been oblivious to it. I haven't really listened to anyone say that.
That's excellent. I think that's wonderful.
That's something we definitely want to preach here. Stay creative.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, definitely. Instead of
Progress. Baby steps.
Well, that's good. I'm very happy to hear that. So did you ever get you're going to college for theater?
Oh, I got it all the time. I got a lot of like, you did AP, you did higher classes. Why are you going for theater? And if anything, that just made me pushed to go for it even more. Like I was always that person. If you told me you can't do that, I'd be like, bet. Let me show you.
Wow.
And so
That's impressive.
I mean, I got that from. I mainly got it from people who weren't in my family and friends. It was mainly people that I would meet. This is like people that you would just kind of meet and like you get to know, and they're like, well, what do you want to do? And you tell them, they're like, well, what are you going to do with that? And it's like theater. That's what I'm doing. But my main thing was they pushed me not only to go for it, but to do research and to show them like, hey, here's what I need to do. Here are the steps I need to take. I've looked it up. I know what I'm doing. And then just be confident behind it. When you get that question, it does kind of give you like oh, am I really going for the right thing? But when you shoot back with yeah, here's my plan. Here's A, B, and C. And they stop and they go, oh, okay, they actually have a plan. And you realize like, yeah, you can absolutely do that. Like, I'm sure the people who are actors and actresses and then animation geniuses, I can't even imagine. Like they got that all the time, but if they wouldn't have pushed through it, we wouldn't have what we had today.
So I have the question I'm going to ask each of you. In your imagined perfect future, what do you achieve with your art?
I'd like to do I guess I just talked about it. I want to do concept art for animated film. So whether that be working for a company like Disney or Pixar, just doing my own thing, being the one that kind of develops the stories and gets it rolling. I don't want to be the one clicking the buttons, animating the things. I just want to be the one that kind of in the back, the development, help it get going, and then give that to people and say, okay, here's what we've done. Now make a movie out of it.
So you don't want to create art, you want to create the story for it.
Sort of. I'll figure that more out as I go through classes and stuff, and kind of see more where I'm gonna end up going with my major, because there's different routes you can take with it, and sometimes people in the street, they'll do multiple. They'll have some on a film, they may do one thing, the next one they may do two other things. You can move around sometimes. So anywhere in that general region, I'd like to be.
Even bigger dreams. So Pixar is one.
Yeah.
Right. So is possibly the creating of your own series? Is that kind of
maybe
company? Your own company?
I was thinking company next.
Yeah.
Series
okay, sorry.
Yeah.
That's okay. See, that's what David and I talk to each other about. Like I asked him when we started working on this, because my initial idea for us is, wouldn't it be cool if we could do a talk show? And so we were talking to each other, and I said, well, what's your dream? And he's like, I think we should try to do a talk show. I'm like, well, we can do that. What's your big dream? And it's like, oh.
Yeah.
That was my big dream. Until 5 seconds
That
ago.
was my big dream. I was like, oh, no, this is how we're going next.
I want to win an Oscar. I'm like, there you go. So, in fact, do you want to tell the story about your glasses?
So I got these new glasses, and this is right after we started all this, and Donna having that talk with me of no, dream big, think big, and be the person who you want to be in your wildest dreams. Go ahead and do that and think about that. And so I was picking out glasses, and because I got a new prescription, it's like, oh, cool, time for a new pair. And I saw this pair on the wall, which is the one I have now. And the reason I picked it is because what went through my head was, if I wore a blue suit to the Oscars, those glasses would look really good. Seriously. And and brown shoes? I'll take those. Yeah, the brown stripes. And then the lady at the place, she said, those look sharp. And I was like, yeah, they do.
There you go.
They sure do. You got to think big. And so I want to get to Taylor, what you asked her, but real quick, because this triggered something in my head. Do you think part of your creative gene is creating the stories behind the things you draw? Because yes, you can make concept art, but if you're making concept art, that sounds to me like someone's coming to you and saying, hey, can you draw this idea for a crepe myrtle coming out of a book? If you want to do something like you get the story started, do you think that's part of your creative gene? Maybe I have this story and I want to, here's what they look like and here's what they'll do.
Yeah, even just homework assignments for classes I've had before. One of my last final I turned in, the project was to do a minimum 2-board panel thing.
Was that an animation thing on your Instagram?
No, that was a different thing, but similar. So we had to do, it was a storyboarding project, and so we had to do a minimum of 2 panels. and he said, you can do up to 5 if the professor said you could do up to 5 if you want. And half the class ended up, we're all like, oh yeah, it's the end of the year, we're just going to do the 2. I don't know if anyone did 2. I think he pushed some people to do 7 in the end. Like, so like, everyone kept going with it, and so I ended up with 6 because I'd sketch out whatever I had planned, and then I'd show it to the professor, and he's like, oh, what if we did this? And I'm like, yeah, that works. And so like even just for this little project, like going into it even more, and it was a small project, but like I had just pages in my sketchbook filled with all like backstory and like, oh, what if it was like this, and why would it be like just going into it. And I think that's what I like about it, is just like developing. Like the final project was just like 6 images, but I had pages in my sketchbook that was like the development and why it was that. So I think that's what I like about it, is just creating it. Like even if it's just for like something small like that, like I want to go and do more with it. I still have the pages. I want to develop that even further into something.
That's terrific. What a wonderful assignment. And the way to approach it so that he just kind of coaxed it out of you. Because if he had said from the beginning, everybody has to do 8 panels or whatever it was.
And no one would have wanted to do that. But so like telling us, hey, you can start with 2, and then people would show, we had to do a critique in front of the class, so people would show like their 2 panels, and someone would be like, well, what if you had another one at the end that was this, and then someone would bounce off of that and be like, yeah, and then you could do, and it was just everyone ended up just developing everyone else's, and it worked out really well in the end, where everyone ended up pushing, like on their own, they pushed it way further than what the original assignment was, and I think that's maybe what the professor had in mind to begin with.
Oh. I was like, oh no.
What was that about?
Absolutely.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
I didn't realize it.
I think I remember the only 2 that heard it.
I realized once she guessed, I'm like, what's that?
I thought something happened.
That's what
I thought you were gonna punch Taylor.
what did I say wrong?
No, it was definitely me. But that's a wonderful, wonderful story. And now you have something that's kind of on the back burner. You got your ideas, and you can come back to it. I love that. So do you want to tell us anything more about your creative thoughts?
There's time for it later. You can
Come back to me.
We'll go to your future dream.
Yeah, we're going to Taylor right now.
Future dream.
Ultimate goal would be New York, Broadway, either musicals. I have developed a great love for straight plays being at college. It's something that, we did the 2 in high school that were straight plays. And I was like, this is cool. Like, I kind of like going back to straight plays. But I was like, but most of my life I've done musicals, so that's probably what I want to do. But after doing several in college, I really have developed a love for straight plays. So ultimate dream is Broadway, New York, musical, straight plays, anything, but honestly, anywhere I can do theater and what I love, I'll do it.
So the pinnacle of your acting would be Broadway.
Yeah.
So what's bigger than Broadway in your dream?
I think the only other thing other than like being on Broadway I'd love to do, a lot of people are like, oh, you want to be famous for money, or oh, you want to be famous for this. I really don't. I don't really care about like money. Like, yeah, that's great, but I want to be famous because I want to inspire kids. I have a big passion of working with kids. And as much as I love working with kids and people are like, well, why don't you be a teacher? I'm like, I want to inspire them from a different standpoint. I'd love to inspire them by saying, look, I did this, you can do it too. So I'd love to, like, if I could, to get to that point with Broadway or wherever, where I have a big enough name to start either like a little small, I don't even know how to really say it, like organization, I guess, like just to inspire kids to do what they love.
Almost like a charity.
Yeah, kind of thing like that.
It doesn't even have to be a charity, though. It would just be like the Taylor Allman Institute.
Yeah, just something. Yeah. Taylor Allman Institute.
Taylor Allman.
There you go.
That's great. I wanted to. My first major in college was English education because, as we've said before, I wanted to be Donna. I was going to be an English theater speech teacher. And it's because I do love working with kids, and I was thinking high school, but I also do enjoy working with children. If I was going to be a doctor, I'd be a pediatrician. Now, I'd love to be a doctor. I've seen every episode of Grey's Anatomy 3 times. I love that. I'm still watching it right now. Like I love that show and House. I love medical. I'd love to be a doctor. I'd love to do that, but I can't. I can't. Well, I can't handle the that patient died. That got really dark. Anyway, point is, if I was to be a doctor, I'd be a pediatrician because I love working with kids. Ooh, it got light again. Kids and doctors. Whoa, it's going all over the place. I would love to work with kids, and so, but I think I agreed with you whenever we told the story of me seeing the communication booth. I decided I would still love to inspire kids and work with kids in that way, but this ain't it, Chief. This is not the way to do it. And that's a big part of what we're doing at Stay Creative is to inspire people. And of course that includes kids. Maybe most importantly, that includes children and making sure that they know that they are allowed to be different and weird. I think weird is good. Free from fear of judgment.
Yes. I mean, normal is boring. That's what I would tell all my kids when I just did a summer camp with kids for musical theater. And I would just be goofy and wacky because that's what, kids enjoy. And sometimes kids would look at me and be like, "You're weird." And I'd look at them and be like, "Well, normal's boring." And they would kind of just look like, "Oh, I never thought of it that way." Okay. Yeah, there you go. And then they start dancing. It's like, now you're the weird. No.
So this. I'm sorry. You go ahead. No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
So the question I was going to have for you is, who are your inspirations?
She's talking to Taylor right now.
So sorry.
Yeah.
Your inspirations.
So I started doing theater because of my grandmother. I started when I was 5 in like children's church plays, and I never had a desire to do theater or anything. I just wanted the solo that like kind of sang, and I got to go up and sing a little bit. Like that was all I ever wanted because I was a social kid. But as far as like getting up on stage and doing stuff, I was never like me, let me do it. And I remember we were doing our first play that I was able to do. And my grandmother, I told her I just wanted to do a solo. And she looked at me and she's like, "Well, why don't you try for a speaking part, something like that? Like, why don't you just try it?" And I was like, "I can do that?" She's like, "Yeah, you can do that." Like, no one had ever really like pushed me to go and do it. And so I tried out and I got the little parts that I had. And ever since then, I was like, all right, I want to keep going. And so my grandmother was definitely the first person to ever inspire me to do theater itself. And ever since then, it's just basically been family and friends. Like anyone who looks at me and is like, "You can do this," as opposed to, "Oh, Ron, you want to do something more practical." It's like another stepping stone for me to just keep going. So.
Is there anybody who's like I don't know, Beyonce, or like someone like that you look up to for inspiration?
I don't think there's like a certain actor or actress in general, but there's like a type, I guess you could say. Like I'm very much, there's one actress in Hamilton, Renee Elise Goldsberry, I guess that's how you say it. She's a mother of 2, and she's married, and she is a Christian mom. And that's like the epitome of what I want to be, like Broadway actress, mother. And like I follow her on Instagram, so I keep up with things. But like any actors or actresses like that show that you can still have the values and the life that you want to have like even when you're famous. Like it doesn't mean you're famous, you have to throw all that away. Because that's something I've always wanted to be a mom. I'm a huge Christian. Like that's something that's always going to be a part of me. And like people always look at you, especially in theater, and they're like, "Oh, you can't have that." I'm like, "Why not?" People have it. So that kind of like type of actor and actress, that's definitely someone that I look up to.
That's great. And you'll get there if you keep putting that out into the universe. That's what Donna's told me. Put it in the universe. And what better way to do that than on a podcast?
Send it to everybody.
And on the internet, and that goes into the
It's there.
So
That's
Broadway,
the closest we can get, in a way.
Broadway, if you hear this, I'm ready.
Well, you never know who's going to listen to this. So what about you, Elise? What do you, and the same question, your inspirations, famous and close to you? Or a thing that...
Yeah. I can't think of like any particular person or group really. I just remember I went to Disney one time when I was little, and there was, I want to say it was at Hollywood Studios, and there was a show in the back. It wasn't a ride or anything. It was this little show tucked in the back of the park. And it was this thing where they had all the artists who designed Mushu. And it was like maybe a little 20, 30-minute show. And it was like they had Mushu like interacting with the artists and the animators who developed him, and showing like the process and the behind the scenes and everything, and showing like how they went about making this. And I remember sitting there and looking at that like, wait, people made this movie. It's not just a thing that exists in the world. Like, there are people who put time and effort and their creativity into making this thing. And here I am, like a little 7-8-year-old kid that loves this thing. And I'm like, there are people that do this. I can do this. This is a thing that happens. I want to do that. And so I guess that was like where it started for me. And I don't know if it's just any particular person that inspires me, but just like the thought, like just the people who go and do that stuff, they make that their life. And I aspire to be like that. Like, they're people who make art and make this kind of creative passion what they do in life, and inspire the next generation of people to do it. And so I want to be one of the ones up there one day that are making these films, and then there'll be a little kid sitting there watching it and being like, hey, I want to do that. Right. Like, just start the cycle over. So
it is a big cycle. It all starts somewhere, because the people that you watch, they were kids once.
Exactly, and they were watching the original Disney, and like, they started somewhere. Someone, like, you always have to start somewhere. And so if I can be the one up there someday that inspires the next generation to be like, hey, I want to do that. Like, that's what I want to do.
So were you interested in art and drawing before you saw that?
Oh, yeah. I think I've been drawing as long as I could hold a crayon. Now, those were not good by any means.
Probably to my standard.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure.
4-year-old Elise, just crayons everywhere.
I'm sure it has better handwriting than 19-year-old David.
Right?
I can't read my own handwriting sometimes now. Yeah, but
you're not trying to be a handwriter.
Yeah.
Calligraphy
is a whole nother thing. I cannot do that. I have the highest respect for that. My hand is too shaky to make.
Not all heroes wear capes.
Right. Some have a calligraphy.
Right.
Andre has a D&D character, which on the way over here, I was riding with Elise, and I discovered that we both play Dungeons and Dragons.
Great fun.
Andre, a good friend of mine, he has a D&D character that it just has a calligraphy pen, and that's what he does. He's a calligraphist. Is that what it is? Calligrapher. Yeah, that's the character.
That's the word of the day.
Yeah, that's
Calligrapher.
Instead of absolutely, say calligrapher. That's not the word.
Say it
Is it?
correctly.
Oh, no, you
I have a real issue. This is something listeners will discover. I have a real issue with words. Just period.
But you decided to go on your own business.
I like to write. That's why I write. And I read what people write for me whenever.
That's why I do theater.
Yeah, there's a reason that the word calligraphy has not been in any one of my plays. And it's because of that.
Challenge yourself, right? Make one word that you cannot say.
Starring a calligrapher. Starring that.
Character is a calligrapher.
You know what I'm talking about. So I've loved hearing about what you guys have done and what you plan on doing. Is there any other details of the things you've done that you think are big part of your lives that have shaped your creative process now? And how do you approach these sorts of things? And then also after that, this is Creative Conversations, which involves creative thoughts. So if you have any creative thoughts you just want to say and put out there, please feel free to do so. But anyway, if you remember the first part of my question 10 seconds ago, let's go all the way back. Any other points in your life that were big moments that shaped your creative process? And what is your creative process now? And what can you tell people to maybe do?
For me, at least.
For you, Elise.
For me, Elise. I'd say because I am a very visual person, I do stuff pertaining to visual arts. I have just piles of sketchbooks, and if I'm working on something, I just fill up the pages. Like, something is better than nothing. So if you're trying to brainstorm or come up with an idea for something, I just fill up sketchbook pages, just quick little things, anything that I can go back to and reference.
That's what I was about to ask.
Yeah.
How do you start? You're staring at a blank page, your mind is blank, what gets it started?
Put the pen to the paper and hope something happens.
Okay, well, this is a question that I've actually asked David and I've answered myself. Has there ever been a time where you just really felt like it just came through you, almost like it was not even you doing it?
Probably.
Nothing specific.
Nothing specific, just sometimes like if I'll be on the bus on the way to class or walking around town and I'll be, something's always on the back burner. So I'm just trying to brainstorm for a project or an assignment or something I have, and just out of the blue something will hit me. I'm like, wait, I could use that. And I'll just like go on my phone and just type stuff in the notes app, and then I'll go back and look at it later. I'm like, where did this come from? What was I thinking about? And then hope I can like go back and decipher whatever like string of words I typed in. And then that'll end up, I'll figure out whatever I meant. I'm like, oh, okay. And then transfer that, try and sketch something out, do something with that, or go back and type more and save it for later to when I have more time to work on it.
So everything's kind of in process in different stages.
Yeah.
So you just kind of grab
There's just, yes, I have just bullet points on my phone. I have like the sticky notes stuck everywhere on my desk. I have like random Word documents on my computer, half finished sketchbooks everywhere, like just stuff always going. And sometimes I'll have two different things going. I'm like, wait, these kind of go together, and then I'll end up starting another thing. Or
that's cool though, when you have two ideas and you can see how they can work.
They end up melding together in some way you wouldn't have ever expected, but you have it like you'll see one and then you'll see the other, and you're like, wait, those two kind of mesh, and then you can make a whole nother thing out of that.
Absolutely.
Definitely got it.
Calligraphy. Might as well be for me. If I say that, then you know what I mean. So, okay. So what about you, Taylor? What? Yeah, your creative process. I feel like I know that question was asked a while ago, so hopefully you can remember it.
So when you're in high school, you have so many things going on. Like even though you want to focus on theater, sometimes you just can't because life. So when I was in high school doing theater, it was very much here's your lines, here's your off book date, just get it there. And then you went on stage and you just kind of figured it out as you went. In college, where you're literally focusing your time on this, and you can take more time into it. I've learned how to do things like script analysis, which a lot of people hate because it's more work, but I love it to an extent. Like we learned beats and units, and then actions and all these different things, and we have what's called guideposts, which are like 7 or 8 questions that you just ask with every character you do, Udahagen questions, all these fancy things I never heard of. So now I can go and like beats and units. A unit is essentially whenever a scene starts and ends, and sometimes there are multiple units when a new topic is thrown out. Beats are just when you think your action changes, your intention changes. So if I'm talking to you and I'm trying to get you to tell me a secret and I'm begging you, and I realize that's not works, I may have a new beat and I'm yelling at you, or I'm trying to do a different tactic. And so I really loved that because I've noticed that I played it that well. I'm good at shifting in my
Yeah. You're doing way more than just learning some lines.
Absolutely.
Stand here, never stand over here, right?
So I know now I've learned how to go back and do more of my research, my basis and things like that, and then use it to build a character besides here's your lines, learn them, go. So that's been really cool. That's probably been like something I've loved in college.
No, you have worked with children. So did you adapt that idea, or did you just kind of teach them the here, say a line, here, move here?
I've only worked with kids on theater related things once this past summer, and it was a 2-week thing. But it was, instead of it being here's your character, go home, analysis, blah blah blah, it was here's your character, we start the blocking, we start this, but while we're doing the blocking, the choreography, the singing, and we say, think about how your character would feel, blah, 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 blah. And then if a kid would be like, well, I don't think my character would, then we'd adapt it. We'd show them analysis without calling it analysis.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, yeah.
That's a great approach. I had something else I wanted to ask you. It was in and out of my mind. Where did it go? Oh, see if it'll come back. I do remember
two different methods that I use depending on how many lines I have. So my very first like gifted play that I was in, I was kind of thrown in with a month before the show, and they're like, hey, we need an actress. I need you to learn these 30, 40 lines, go. And I was like, okay. And so I'm used to that. Like I entered it going into this, you need to learn your lines quick. And I just kind of would go a page at a time, and I would learn all the lines on that page, and I would not leave that page until I knew every line word for word. And then when I knew every line word for word, I'd go to the next page, and then I would learn them, go back, do that first page, do the second page, and I keep going until I would get, like, if by the time I've gotten to the fifth page, I know that first page by heart. I can skip
As
it.
I've always said, until you want to throw up.
Right.
And
And then the way I've also learned it, which college has kind of taught me this, is starting at the end.
Oh, really?
You start at the very end, you learn that line, and you do it with someone else. It doesn't have to be the actor or actress that you're acting with, but you do it with someone else, and you read that last line, and then they read the next line, and then you go back and say your last line. They'll say the next line, you'll say the next line, and you go from the end. And you go from the end all the way. And I was kind of like the first time I had someone ask me to help with practice and they did that technique, I was going, if you say so, sure. But
you're not learning your cues that way, are you?
You are, because you go back. So you start at the end, you learn that line. And then what happens is the other person will read your cue line and you'll go back, start from the beginning and go back to the page.
Does it work better for you?
I kind of use it interchangeably.
Okay.
I'll start out the way I've always known, going page by page, learning a page, blah, blah, blah. But if I'm struggling with a certain section, then I'll go from the end and start to the beginning. So I use
never heard that technique.
It's really cool. It's I think it's part of like the Meisner technique, I think. But it's just, I'd never heard of it till college, and someone asked me to try it with it. I was like, all right, sure, sounds good.
I guess it would have to make you like think about it more. You're not just like reciting lines. You have to go back and like think, okay,
what caused me to say this line?
What's the next thing that happens?
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
So I have a topic I want to ask the group about. Earlier we said, and this is something we've always mentioned, is everyone has a unique gift that they should share with the world, and everybody has that creativity. And we were talking about this a bit earlier about how everyone can make a living. That's what life's about, making a living, about your passion and all those things. And I think that is very true and very important. But it got me thinking on this weird path of, well, we need people who make cardboard boxes. So what happens if everybody in the world follows their passion? Do we just not have cardboard boxes anymore?
So what you're saying is that having the passion for creating cardboard boxes is not a thing?
No, I mean, I'm sure it is. But how many people at that cardboard box factory do you think actually?
Who aspires to do other things?
Because I'm sure there'll be all, in this perfect world we often talk about and dream of, there are, and I've been trying to think about this recently, and this has made it click, of like, what would be the flaws in that? And we need people who are coal miners, and we need people who dig up oil, and we need people who make cardboard boxes and work at paper companies, Dunder Mifflin, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We need these boring, mundane things. So if we live in a world where everybody does exactly what they're passionate about and makes a living off of their art and creativity, do we just not have those things anymore? Maybe we have robots making them?
I was thinking robots.
I'm sure there are people who are passionate about making robots, I guess. Okay, solve my problem. Thanks. That's the show.
I mean, I think there are definitely people who, our passion is creative thinking. Other people, their passion is, doctors, lawyers, things like that, or coal miners. But a lot of people, too, I feel like maybe, before you go and you exactly know your passion sometimes, or when you're starting out, maybe you start out like at the paper company and you're like, I really want to be an actress, but I need to kind of start out somewhere. Let me start out at the paper company. You may realize, wait, yes, as much as I love acting, this is maybe something else. So I think it's not necessarily there's never going to be people who are going to do that. I think there's always going to be people who either their passion is these things that to us are kind of like, oh, well, who would want to do that? Or they start out there and find that they love it. And I don't say give up on their passion, but realize they could, like some people could do both. Some people, like their passion may be working, like maybe they love theater, but then they start working at this paper company. They fall in love with it. They love it. They stay there, but they keep doing their passion on the side and they realize they can have both. I guess that's just my thought on it.
Yeah. You kind of read my mind on that because I feel like there are people inspiration. So it's just a matter of your view. And I think that there are certainly people in any job that can be happy doing that job.
Yeah.
So whatever the job is, if you hate it, then go do something that makes you happy. But if you're in a job that somebody else is not happy in, but you're happy in it, then that's your benefit. That's your gift.
Yeah.
I guess so. I guess that to everybody, there's so many people in the world that you're right, somebody's passion is making cardboard boxes.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I had this thought of, well, if everybody is an actor, then what do you do? But you balance it. And, I think that maybe I'm overthinking it, or I'm looking maybe too broadly. When we tell people to be creative, we might just mean involve that in your daily life.
Yeah.
Keep working at that cardboard company, but draw a picture every once in a while.
Yeah.
People need to find a way to express it. But people need to put their ideas out there. And that's something, not just creativity, it's just ideas. Things you want to say in the world need to be put out there. Unless you're like, a horrible person. Then keep it to yourself. Because I thought about that too. Like, we tell people to inspire. What if like a murderer is listening? Like, yeah. You know what? David and Donna, they're right. I should just chase my passion and then they go on a killing spree. Like, I've thought about this before. I'm so sorry.
I have not. So,
Oh, wow. You're not putting that in the universe.
we did not want to put that in the creative murder was not what we're talking about. Not at all.
Elise, do you have any thoughts on this topic? You haven't really. I don't know if you've spoken anything about it.
I guess, yeah, like you're saying, like, take the creativity into what some would see it as a mundane job. Like, you're making cardboard boxes, find new ways to make the cardboard boxes. Fold them together fun. Make it an origami box.
Yeah.
Like,
Make a D&D castle out of the core.
make a
Core board. I don't want to say core board.
Make a giant fort out of the cardboard boxes. Have fun with it. I mean, maybe don't do that during work hours. That might.
No, during
Go for it. Go for it. But like, find ways to bring the creative into what may be the mundane, I guess.
And it could be with the work environment, not the work itself.
Yeah.
So
Do you guys have any particular ways that come to the top of your head, maybe that you like to involve creativity in your normal mundane lives when you're just doing whatever? I mean, I know for me, I'm always listening to a podcast or always watching something. No matter what I'm doing, I'll always have that on in the background. So do you guys have anything like that?
I mean, I always have music going, whether I'm just like sitting in my room or I'm drawing or if I'm driving, I just always have music or something going in the background. Like, yeah, silence is nice sometimes, and sometimes I won't have anything going, but I like having something else going on to where it's like I could focus on one thing, but there's also more going on at the same time, I guess.
Music and like musical theater specifically has always been my calming factor. I think that's always been like I got in a really bad wreck about a year and a half ago maybe, and I got really, really bad anxiety. Like I would just wake up and I may have nothing to do that day, and I would wake up feeling anxious and like I couldn't breathe and all this stuff. And I was like, what's going on? But every morning I would wake up and I'd get that feeling or whatever, but I'd put on music and all of a sudden it was kind of like, all right, I can calm, I can do this, I can, like, I would use like the thing that I love as like driving forward, I guess. And so, I mean, music has definitely been for me something that I just have to have in my, like, it's become like a necessity.
there we go.
Bad words.
I'm not even going to try.
I looked straight at David. I was just like, "Yep, I called it."
Calligraphy is a necessity.
Calligraphy. Yeah.
She speaks.
What-
Try doing the things that you
That's not
think.
a common occurrence.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't tripped over a word yet, but it's coming.
Well, I've filtered back my comment that I keep saying, so we're all making some progress.
Wait, what are you talking about?
Absolutely.
Which comment?
Absolutely.
Absolutely what?
The word.
I know.
I know.
Need to clarify.
If nobody laughs, that was the question.
Is the joke funny if nobody laughs?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It can be. I think so. I told a lot of jokes that nobody laughed at. And I'm like, well, you know what? And that makes me, and that's one of those things that I stay up late at night thinking about from 3 years ago when I said a joke no one laughed at. But sometimes when I know it's funny, I'm like, y'all are stupid. I say it very often whenever I'm talking with my friends, like over the internet. on Xbox. When I'm talking to my friends on Xbox, because that's when, or in real life, I'll say something. I do see them. I leave my house anyway. I'll say something that I think is hilarious, and no one will laugh, and I'll instantly say that joke was hilarious, and I want you to acknowledge me. I deserve for you to say that was funny. Or when I type in the group chat and no one likes I'm like, that joke was funny, and I want you to acknowledge.
So you like your own message.
That-
And you just need
Always like my own post.
I mean, I make a pun. People just look at me. I'm like, what are you talking about? That was good.
I appreciate your puns. Sometimes they come in such rapid succession.
The fact that I said the word pun and you went, that's really all I need to know.
Taylor is the queen of puns.
I am.
For 7 years now, and I love you. And I love your puns. They're just a lot. And I appreciate them.
I'm gonna need you to bring it down a little bit.
People in college like my puns.
Let's explore.
Dislike your puns. Oh, no.
Let's explore this pun idea.
Oh, no.
What can you do with it? Can you make a
Me?
snippet of it?
I'm not gonna lie. We were doing a segment on resumes in my like intro to theater class, and my teacher, she told me about something. She's like, you need what's called a resume cookie. I'm like, a resume cookie? What's that? And she's basically like, yeah, weird. She's like, she's like, my resume cookie is the Titanic releve. I'm like, what's a Titanic releve? And she's like, you know on Titanic when Rose does that thing and she goes up on all of her toes? And like she literally goes up on her toes, not like the ball of her feet, like her toes. She's like, I can do that. So I put on my resume Titanic releve, and they go, well, what's that? And it gets them interested, blah, blah. And I was stuck. I was like, what do I put on my resume? I can't name it. And literally one of my friends looked at me and she's like, you can't even name anything? I'm like, I literally can just make puns. I don't know what you want me to do. She goes, put it on your resume. So I did, and I put it on my resume, and my teacher was reading resumes, and she looked at me and she said, make a pun. I said, give me an object, and she gave me an object, and I made a pun. She just gave me this, like, shocked face. I was like, that's right.
You underestimated.
You
You underestimate my power.
I say just use it for your, like, it can be something as small as people are having a rough day, they're talking to you, and you just make a pun, and they crack a smile for 5 seconds. Like, that's how I use
It's
it.
your special power.
There you go.
I have bits that I like to carry around.
So I have this bit.
So I have this bit. That's the bit. So I have this bit. Do you get it?
That's the bit.
That's the bit.
That's the bit.
I do these bits in my life that I like. You got me thinking about like, what do I do that's like a pun? Oh, I just have bits. Like Elise knows this all too well. I like to sing at random moments some of the verses from "Do I Want to Know" by Arctic Monkeys.
I was gonna mention that.
Yeah, we'll just be sitting and I'm like, yeah.
And the funniest thing is when you started writing them all down, you started writing down your bits in your phone, and I would get in the car to hang out with you, and you would go, so I have this new bit, and would pull up your phone and show me like all the bits.
I still have that, like all the jokes. I have a ton of jokes written down. Like I'm gonna do stand up one day.
Absolutely.
One day.
I can't do stand up. I thought you said you do stand up. I'm like, I can make puns, but that's it.
Dude, Elise would be such a great stand up.
Right?
I'd like to think so, but I'd get on stage and I would just see the people and I would just be like,
Dawn is
Just do the door.
hi.
What if you,
I was gonna say Alice.
Oh wait, Alice?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, from Homeroom.
It started with
It did, because Alice was in.
Alice
Alice was a
four-
staple
I kept
character.
the name, everything.
Yeah.
All 4 shows. That was
Alice.
wow. She played an emo chick in the play that we wrote, High School Another Day, Another Test. And then I loved it so much that when I made my short film, I kept the whole character, even the name. I was like, Elise, come play Alice, but in this, please.
Yeah.
It's the best part of the whole thing. You can do stand up as Dwarf. Were you one?
Dwarf number 2.
Dwarf number 2, Slappy.
Dwarf number 2, Slappy.
What were some of your lines?
I don't even remember the ones with the mirror. What was it? Snow White said something. Or, no, they do the mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? And I just had to look at her and go, well, it's certainly not you.
I remember my grandparents, because I've known Elise since she was 9.
Oh, yeah.
Because we went to church together, families, and know each other. And I remember my grandfather looked at me after that showing, and he just goes, man, I've never seen that side of Elise. And I was like, I know.
Look, I'm always emo. I just say it better than I do on stage.
We should clarify. The dwarf stuff, that's in a different place.
Oh, wait, were you talking about?
No, I'm talking about dwarf.
Oh, I thought you meant okay, yeah, the dwarf, yeah. I'm not usually like.
That was when
I'm
we
not
did
usually a dwarf.
I'm not usually a very rude dwarf
with a beard.
with a beard.
That was when we did a play called The Grimm Brothers Spectacular
Fun.
The Grimm Brothers Spectacular Fun. Yeah.
Hello, and welcome to the
And
Brothers.
she played a dwarf. That's all we really need to know.
Yeah, I had like 30 lines. I was on stage for one scene.
But it stole the show.
It did. That was such a good scene.
What a great show. Let's just this is the theater podcast. Let's just reminisce.
Reminiscing.
We need to make sure we don't do that.
Time. Right.
Whoa! For the longest time. Copyright. Wait, no. YouTube's gonna strike me down. I once made a video called "Good Luck Charlie" without the Charlie, where I took the first episode of Disney's "Good Luck Charlie" and I cut out every single shot of the baby and then every single reference to the baby. It was up for. Thank you so much for laughing. You're the only one. You're the only other one. It's up. I'll show you. It's still up. It's blocked because Disney within 0.5 seconds
Are you
struck it down.
But there's no
Yes.
baby.
Exactly.
So how do you find it?
How do you what?
There's no Charlie. How do you find Charlie?
You can't.
Where's Charlie?
Good luck. It's just I'm so happy you find that funny because nobody else.
I think that's hilarious. I didn't know
Well,
that. I think
if
that's
the-
hilarious.
Is the joke funny if people don't laugh?
Yes. Sometimes they just don't want to
We
laugh.
already established.
Oh, brings us to a point that we made earlier, is art of democracy.
I was about to say that. We have this connection. I don't know if you guys know. We've talked about it before. I think we already talked about it on the show that we have this weird thing.
We do.
She just knows things about me. I'm like, how? What? Okay. And knows what I'm going to say. And we just say things at the same time. So, guys, we already debated this ourselves. So we want to know: is art a democracy?
Can you elaborate?
Yeah.
Yes, we should.
Do
Yes.
people's opinions matter in what you want to express?
If you do something and you say it's art, then it's art. I mean, I go to art school, and so everyone has a very different definition of what their art may be. Someone's art may be very fine art, oil painting, big things you hang up in a museum. Someone's art may be like street performances or like interactive things. Someone's art may be like spray paint, graffiti. Someone's art may be fashion. Someone's art may be music. Like art can be, I guess, I mean, it's a very broad statement, but art can be kind of like whatever you want it to be.
Well, any form of expression.
Yeah, like however you want to choose to express yourself in your art, that's a valid way to do. Like that's your art. That's what you want to make it.
Okay. I like that idea. Did you have an idea?
In the same theater class I was talking about with the resume, we talked a lot about that kind of topic of, do you do art that you believe is true and your passion and what you want to preach with your art, or do you do art that the people want to see?
Mm-hmm.
Because the literal definition of theater is performing for an audience. If you don't have an audience, you're just telling a story. And, so we talked about it a lot. We did cabaret my first semester. And so it was a lot of, do we do the cabaret that the people want to see, or do we do the cabaret that we want to show them? And I think the way I always took from it, or the way I've always believed, is the best art you can do is the art that you truly believe in yourself. So if you're doing something just because you think the audience is going to like it better, but you don't believe in that, then it's not going to be the best product. So I feel like, there's always going to be people who don't like what you do. There's always going to be people who look at your art and go, I don't like this. And that's when you can say, okay, we'll go find someone else whose art you do like. I'd rather produce art that I believed in, produce plays that I believed in, was in plays that I believed in, and felt were needing to be shared with the world, than something that I thought the audience would just be like, oh, I like this.
So we're getting close to wrapping up, but I love your thoughts, and that leads me to this next point. There's one last question I want to ask before we get to the end of this excellent show. I've loved having you guys here. So those paintings that sell for thousands of millions of dollars, and it's like a red stripe on like a white background.
I have seen those.
And I think that's all this experiment where some art students put a pineapple on an empty table in an art museum and they put a glass case around it.
Mhm.
Is that art?
I guess to whoever made it, if they want to say it's art, then it's art to them. I guess, like, I don't. I guess, yeah, you could say art is whatever you want it to be, but also there's a pineapple sitting in a glass case is not a Monet painting. Like, there's.
So are there different levels of art?
I guess there's just,
Yeah.
maybe not levels, but just different types. Like,
It's like a spectrum.
yeah, there's just a broad spectrum of what could be art, I guess.
Yeah.
And you can't compare a pineapple to the Mona Lisa.
Exactly. Like, art for someone like looking at the table in front of me. Someone had to design that table. Someone had to put thought into making that table. In a way, I guess that could be considered art, but that's not looking at like a giant old cathedral with stained glass windows and like these huge architectural feats, but it's still someone put thought into both of those. So they're still both art in a way.
There is value in everything.
Exactly. Like, someone has to design everything. Like, someone has to put work into everything.
If you have intentions or purpose
Yeah.
for it, then it is your art.
Yeah.
Your expression.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think there might be a slight difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's interesting. I wanted to make a comment on what you said too, because especially in the field of performing,
Mhm.
there is always so much pressure to do the popular thing, to
Absolutely.
to move up, to find your fame and fortune.
Mhm.
So it's really a really tough point for some people to decide, am I going to do what moves me forward, or am I going to stick to my principles? And that's a very interesting thing that you were talking about. I don't think that as much with visual,
Yeah.
but it could be though. If you're designing a story, and some huge movie producer wants
Yeah.
it, but only if you change something integral.
If
to,
you're-
you know,
If you're doing your own thing, not so much. If you're freelance doing your own whatever, it probably wouldn't. But if you're working for a large company or something, then at that point you might have to, if you're working on, say, a film or a project or something, you would probably have to adapt your style to fit whatever. Like, everyone's going to have to shift slightly in order to make a cohesive thing.
yeah, you do have to collaborate.
Yeah.
But there are still like, where's the line?
Yeah, there's a fine line between working together and collaborating and completely dominating and completely bending whatever you wanted to do to accommodate for someone else's.
I agree with that.
I mean, that's the same with like in the theater world, you know, the show Dear Evan Hansen, the message that it has behind it, is an important message. And some people may be like, well, I don't think you need to show this on stage or certain parts of it, like, you know, but if it's to drive the message forward, that's something we always talked about, like spectacle versus the actual meaning of the show.
Yes.
You know, what's necessary to the show and what's just, I'm trying to make big money and things like that.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming on the show. It's been really our pleasure, I think.
Absolutely.
Donna,
One more time.
Less than 10.
Yeah.
I'll leave it. I'm not going to count. Please, someone. I was like, I'm going to count. No, I don't want to count. Someone leave a tally in the comments below. Please do. So
Thank you for having us. I
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
thank you for sharing your creativity with the world and for continuing to do so. Where can our audience members find you guys?
You can
Social media.
You answered all the questions first, so you go first.
Oh man.
This is Elise, by the way.
This is
Elise Drennan.
Hello. Elise, my Instagram is where I usually post my art, and I have to go and look at it and make sure I spell it correctly.
I'll link it in the description below, by the way, all these things.
Yeah, Elise Navidad, but there's two Y's at the first Elise, so ELIISE, I hope I said that right out loud.
Elise Navidad.
I like that you kept that.
You made that in like 8th grade, and I still haven't come up with anything
We came
else.
up with so many puns with it. Police Elise.
No.
Elise.
That was my favorite one.
Wee woo wee.
That's the whole significance that we don't want to get into.
Yeah,
Maybe
Elise
another
Navidad-
day.
Elise Navidad is the one that is stuck.
Well,
Yeah.
that'll be in the description.
Yes.
Anywhere else, or is that the main place you can find
That's
you?
pretty much it.
And what about you, Taylor?
My main place probably Instagram too. I will post a lot of what projects I'm working on, especially in college. And mine is drama.queente. Same with you. I've had that since like
Perfect.
8th grade.
To
That was great. I loved whenever we first met. and I was like, I'm gonna find her Instagram. I typed in Taylor Allman, and I was Drama Queen Tay. That's the one. Because you type in the name, and there are multiple profiles.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the one.
It originally was Tay the Cat, because that was what y'all came up with, because my very first role was a cat.
You did the cat. It was
the
a
cat.
You do the lion as well.
Yeah.
The
Lion in Wizard of Oz.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's big. You were in that movie?
No, yes, I was. No,
What's the first one?
The cat. I was in Thumbelina. And I was a sassy cat.
The
Sassy
cat.
Sassy. That was her name.
Did y'all
Sassy
see the
cat.
trailers, the cat?
I don't know how
I
to pronounce
have,
it.
I have a lot of feelings about that.
That might be a separate podcast.
It
Yeah.
looks awful. Anyway.
Actors in there. I don't know. I'm excited.
The CGI looks, the CGI looks worse than Sonic.
Well, I was-
Anyway, I'll make a blog post about
I
how
have
the
feelings
CGI
about
is.
Sonic.
At least it's like, let me do
I
Sonic.
love Sonic,
No,
but
I don't
cheeseburgers
want-
are so good. We're talking about Sonic the Hedgehog.
Look, Sonic breakfast burritos.
What?
Not Sonic. Look, you go to Sonic, you get an iced coffee, you get a breakfast burrito.
I never saw the movie.
No, I want to talk about the other one because I don't want to talk about it.
See, I saw the same when I saw Lion King. I was like, how do you do a live action Lion King if it's all about
It's
animals?
CGI.
That's what I said. It's not live action.
Elise, please write a blog for us about
Yeah.
the perfect breakfast from Sonic, and then about how much you hate the Sonic the Hedgehog
Right in
trailer.
I just.
We can call it Sonic Thoughts.
Sonic Talks with Elise.
Sonic
A weekly, you review every food item. I want to do that. I'm so hungry.
I've had the mozzarella sticks and the breakfast burrito. That's it. I don't get anything else.
You have the tater tots?
I probably have
What about a chili dog? Sonic the Hedgehog eats chili dogs.
I don't like chili. I don't like chili.
Okay, what is this show become?
I don't know.
This is not Diners, Dives, and Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dimes, and Dungeons and Dragons. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for listening to Creative Conversations with David and Donna. This has been David.
Taylor.
Elise.
And Donna.
Stay creative.